Kill 'Em All, so named in response to the record company executives who had failed to show any interest.
The album Kill 'Em All with Kirk's guitar playing sounds so much better than the demos, in my opinion. I mean, when I listen to the demos, I mean, I don't even know how they got signed because they just sound so awful compared to what was on the album, which was very polished and had all this speed and aggressiveness. I mean, my first turn onto them was when I heard Kill 'Em All. That album changed my life. I mean, I used to think the heaviest thing in metal was like Iron Maiden, pre-Sabbath, and when I heard Kill 'Em All, everything that I thought was heavy was considered obsolete. I mean, this made Iron Maiden sound like the Bee Gees.
They hooked up with Johnny Z, with Megaforce Records, and he was probably one of the strongest of the independents at the time, and he pushed them like crazy. And plus they just at that time it was just exploding. They got their demo out early, so a lot of people from all the underground had already heard about them. They probably put out 2,000 demos worldwide through the tape trading. It's it's a nice little network, and I think by doing that groundwork and then just being pushed and having the records on the shelves, when they did, it just really took off. And they, and then of course they got on good tours, early on, and they were out there. You got to get as much exposure as you can,
It just exploded in the underground. They toured extensively across the states, and when got Kill 'Em All was doing like 65,000 copies worldwide, and on a tiny little label, that was really, really good.
Kill 'Em All is an all-time great record. It's just still astonishing to this day. You can reel the songs off now: Motorbreath to Phantom Lord, to No Remorse, to Seek and Destroy, to Whiplash, to Four Horsemen, to Jump in the Fire, and they're all great numbers. And immediately how each one of them sounds. And the thing is, although Metallica's power and extremity now is certainly diminished because so much has changed in the last 2 decades, what's left are great songs, very well played and extremely well constructed, and performed with a real sense of verve and style by the band who really felt they were on the verge of something great. Kill 'Em All became, as it were, an all-time great thrash album, but it was more than that. It turned metal on its head.
Kill 'Em All was fast and raw, but Metallica, and in particular James and Cliff, were rapidly developing as songwriters, and it was clear that their music wouldn't confine itself to the thrash metal style for long. After tours with Raven and Venom, they returned to Lars Ulrich's home country of Denmark to record their next album, Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning was Metallica's second album, and I think it took everybody by surprise. Now, Kill 'Em All was a very good debut, very strong debut. It defined a sound and started to define an era, which became known as thrash. But nobody was expecting the step up Metallica took with Ride the Lightning, and they really did step up.
They took it to another level on this set on Ride the Lightning. The lyrics were a little better, the production was a little better, the songs were a bit more aggressive than on the first one.
Suddenly there was an epic feel to some of the songs like Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice. Suddenly you had a sense of confidence on tracks like Call of Cthulhu and Fight Fire with Fire, and For Whom the Bell Tolls, that you hadn't really heard before. And the thing about Ride the Lightning is that it's a consistent album from beginning to end. There are moments in Kill 'Em All that slightly dip. There is nothing on Ride the Lightning that dips. Everything is at such a high standard. To a large extent, I feel it's because the lineup they had at the time, which many would regard rightly as the classic lineup, Kirk Hammett guitar, James Hetfield guitar vocals, Lars Ulrich drums, Cliff Burton bass, plus Flemming Rasmussen as producer-engineer, gave them a sensibility and a belonging and a focus. And I think it's really true to this day that Metallica diehards argue incessantly Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets, which was the greatest Metallica album, but it is one of those two. And I think Ride the Lightning belongs up there, and to me I'd actually put it as the finest because it was the moment Metallica became great.
I just think from beginning to end, it's a great record.
While Ride the Lightning was a masterpiece, some fans were concerned by the direction Metallica took with the acoustic ballad Fade to Black. For the first time, the band were faced with accusations of selling out to a more commercial direction.
By the time Ride the Lightning came out, you had a lot of thrash metal bands. The term had been coined. You had something called the Big Four of thrash, which was Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. Now, with Ride the Lightning, Metallica made it very clear that they weren't about to be confined to a genre label like thrash metal, which was one of the reasons they felt able to expand into ballad territory with Fade to Black.
I think Fade to Black shows where Metallica are going. At the time, it shows where they could go. You know, it shows that there's a different kind of direction that they could do. Even though it kind of extrapolates all that they're very, very good at, that because they're melodic touch, it shows that there is they can speak to a lot more people than there would be. They're not going to be trapped in a scene. This thing can go very, very mainstream.
Seemed to be just a little bit more. It wasn't the full brutal thrash of Kill 'Em All. It was a little more progressive and not all out thrash all the way through a million miles an hour the way Kill 'Em All mostly was. You know, but I love the album. I mean, I got addicted to the album. I mean, it took 2 listens for me to get hooked to Ride the Lightning, but then that probably is arguably my favorite Metallica album. I'm still undecided between that and Master of Puppets. Yeah. Now, if I can Ride the Lightning, you know, it did so well independently that that's how they eventually went from being on Megaforce to getting picked up by Elektra Records.
By 1986, Metallica were riding a wave of critical and commercial popularity. A new wave of American thrash metal bands had risen up in their wake.
And I think they put, you know, thrash metal and Bay Area in general on the map. I mean, before that, Bay Area was always, you know, before that known for like Grateful Dead and Hayden Ashbury, the hippies, you know, and that was like the first. Metallica put it on the map as, you know, as something other than that. You know, it's like the Bay Area riffing, their Bay Area metal, to where everybody started talking about it. Every record company wanted to sign a Bay Area band. You know, they don't care what they sound like, as long as they're from Bay Area and they got the Bay Area riffing or whatever. So in a way, it's like the success always kind of kills because you top out and then it dies out, you know. Every band was signed, you know, it was like a stock market crash, you know. It's where everybody got in and then, you know, there's nobody else left to do anything. And it got so oversaturated, boring, nothing was being created, and there was something brewing up there in Seattle, and that was the new thing, you know. So